Sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, friends, neighbors, comrades, all citizens of the world, wherever you're going, wherever you've been, and wherever you're at, we welcome you to the Live from the Heartland show here on YouTube. New episodes air every Friday at 9 a.m. Central Time with individual interviews posted throughout the following week. I'm your host, Michael James, encouraging you to take the chain from the brain, to get back in the people's game, because it's time to move from the lower level to the higher, from the shallower to the deeper, from the one-sided to the many, and from the abstract to the concrete. So without further ado, let's get it on. Welcome all you citizens of the world. Once again, it's Michael James with another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This one is being recorded on Monday, February 26th for the week of March 2nd. And we are really honored to have a longtime co-host and sometimes still a co-host like today, and producer Katy Hogan. Good morning to you, Katy.
Good morning, Michael.
Thank you for joining me. Good to be having a little time with you here on the air, on the TV, wherever people get to see it. A little bit later, we're going to have Mariyana Spyropoulos, and she is running for the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County. And before that, you and I are going to talk about a number of things. I'd like to start off with a little update on something we've been reporting on, and that is our neighbors down on Loyola Avenue. That would be the people at the Roman Susan Gallery. Nathan Smith was recently on the show, and Roberta Schmatz, who was on the show quite a long time ago, but she runs Archie's Cafe. And as many of you, particularly in Rogers Park, know, Loyola University has bought the property where they and a number of tenants live, and is going to tear it down and develop it. So I'm going to give a little update on what I heard from both of them. Nathan Smith thanked us for staying on the case. He says the building at 1234 Loyola has been recently purchased by Loyola University. There's an article this week in Block Club Chicago by Kaylee Padar. And the key things from those are that the 49th Ward office of Maria Hadden, our alderwoman, has asked Loyola to extend leases for as long as possible and help businesses and residents relocate. Also, Loyola spokesperson Matt McDermott said the redevelopment of the building will be lengthy, years long, but the university plans to work with tenants to help them find affordable housing in the neighborhood. And they go on to talk about the state senator Mike Simmons hopes to host a meeting with Alderwoman Maria Hadden, where residents and businesses will be able to do a little talking about it. And then Roberta reported to me that though Loyola continues to say they will work with residents and businesses, as far as she knows, Loyola has not yet reached out to anyone. And she reported that Saturday, when many of you will be listening to the show, there is a teach-in at 2 p.m., meeting in front of the building itself, and it's being led by a young activist from Jones High School. They plan to talk about the ongoing situation and Loyola's impact on the community. That's all the information I have. Do you have anything to add to that, Katy?
I don't.
It's a neat little street. It's behind the L to the west of the tracks.
My first apartment as a Mundelein student was right around the corner from that on Lakewood. I walked that block hundreds of times. And the major changes on that block over the years have been whenever Loyola bought up a parcel, if you remember, we used to go to the glass company there to get our glassware.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For the Heartland Cafe back in the day.
Back in the day, we went and bought cartons of glasses, and you always liked to refer back to the fact your father worked for Libby Glass. or somebody in your
No,
family?
no, no. My old college girlfriend, father worked for the glass company.
Oh, okay,
My
never
dad's
mind.
family was Libby Meat and Libby corned
All
beef.
right, that's okay. We don't have to know all those details. Anyway, that building, which was a little industrial complex with parking in front, but not a big building, they just supplied small businesses. That building was raised, and it's just now a parking lot, but not available to the public. It seems like Loyola vehicles are there. I'm not really sure who all is allowed to use that parking lot. The lot right across from it, which was at one time an apartment building, or maybe a couple of them, and then it was a garden run by Waldorf School, actually a lovely garden that their students put together and that kept up for years. Loyola bought that lot, and it is nothing again. It's a blank lot. Those two lots are across the street and next door to the building that you're referring to. And one of the issues people have is just that. Um, while Loyola and many other big schools and other big um, neighbors in various city neighborhoods, be it a sports complex or a university or whatever, have their own plans for development and expansion, it's the community immediately around it on the ground that feels the effects, that mourns the loss of familiar landmarks or places for gathering. In this particular case, really great, small, unique places for gathering that are beloved, which we can relate to. Um, and then there's no real accountability or timeline on what appears in their stead. Um, so it's a age old issue. The big developers, the big money guys, and the guys with the big boots in the neighborhood, sort of running roughshod, as people see it, over their limited, uh, special places.
Well, you and I are both the witnesses to great transformations in Rogers Park, and it's always been a place that did have affordable housing, and there's less and less of that. And in this building, there's about 36 apartments additional to the stores. And
Right.
what's going to happen to them if Loyola doesn't need it for a while? We're going to keep people posted on this, and we've been talking about it off and on for the past month, and we will keep you posted. I'm going to jump to El Paso, Texas,
Big
where
jump.
big jump, but we do have some listeners and viewers down there. And, I go down regularly for this basketball in the Barrio program, which is right on the border. And one of the social service agencies there is Annunciation House. And I've got photographs of that and some murals on the wall. They've been helping migrants big time. People who follow the news know that El Paso is a crossing point from Juarez. A lot of people, a lot of action. The reactionary governor of Texas and his attorney general, a guy named Paxton, have been terrible on the migrant issues, and of course, sending a lot of them to the north. I got this little bit of news that the Attorney General, Paxton, intends to shut down the El Paso Migrant Aid nonprofit, and other humanitarian organizations could be next. And what
Can
the,
he do that?
well, we'll see what he can do. He was, they just elected him, or they voted to keep him in office after he was caught doing some nefarious things. The Ruben Garcia, who runs, he's the director. He responded to Ken Paxton. He said he threatened to revoke the organization's license to operate the state and asked to inspect its records. Human rights activists are chanting, "We are a house," in solidarity with the Catholic nonprofit. It's been there for decades, done a lot of humanitarian aid. It's a faith-based organization. It's worked with the U.S. Border Patrol, with the Immigration and Custom Enforcement, and Department of Homeland Security to take in thousands of people. So Paxton, on the other hand, calls it human smuggling and operating a stash house. So there's a great divide on all these issues, and I think these are the bad guys. We're going to take a little peek at the war in the Middle East. It's an ongoing tragedy, and our friend Mike Klonsky, who does have a show on Lumpen Radio on Friday mornings, he reported in an email, on day 140 of Israel's war on Gaza, the death toll has risen to 29,092. About two-thirds of them are women and children. More than 69,000 Palestinians have been wounded. Overwhelmingly, the territory's hospitals, less than half of which are even partially functioning, are, just not really working. And as you know, and some people have already seen the news, yesterday would be Sunday from when we're recording, in Washington, D.C., in front of the Israeli embassy, a U.S. Air Force member died after setting himself on fire outside the embassy. His fellow's name is Aaron Bushnell. He was 25. He declared he will no longer be complicit in genocide before he set himself on fire. It's sad, but it brings back the Vietnam War when stuff like this was going on.
Yeah, I remember the effect that the Buddhist monks setting themselves alight had on the ramping up of the anti-war fervor around the world, because it was such a shocking statement of like this fellow, and it's really shocking to U.S. citizens, I think, or our fellow U.S. Americans, whether citizens or not, to have somebody from the military make such a statement. It's shocking and sad. I don't know about you, but yesterday we also witnessed. We had some demonstrators for a ceasefire in Gaza at a local political event, which may come up later in your show because Mariyana Spyropoulos was a guest at the Democratic Party of Evanston's presenting the slate event. And interestingly, Michael, two of our best buddies were in amongst the demonstrators. That was former Heartland employees and moms of Heartland babies.
Yeah,
both of
a lot of them.
Both of whom I gave big hugs to, despite the fact I was there to help coordinate produce the event. And so it's a pretty hard issue for all of us right now around the world. We feel helpless in the face of some pretty raggedy assault on people with no defense. And I mean, how the UDF forces feel they're going to knock out Hamas by murdering the entire population, or just laying waste to whatever society they had and forcing them all into poverty and hunger. And is that not going to create more antipathy?
It definitely has. I mean, the number of demonstrations pro-Palestinian and raising all these issues is just increasing, tenfold over and over, more and more. Chicago, yesterday, streets were blocked off. When we say yesterday, we're recording a days early. It's really put the president in a rough position in the election, how to handle it. Netanyahu does not seem to be yielding in any way to all the threats from our government. So it's really serious, and we'll be talking more about it. I have one more thing I'm going to bring up before we move over and really talk about Bring Chicago Home and the latest developments in that. What I would like to share is that The Guardian has reported that Alexei Navalny, who was murdered by Putin, They're claiming that Putin had Navalny killed to thwart a prisoner swap. Allies claim that the Russian leader accused of ordering Navalny's death to stop him being exchanged for FSB. I'm not sure what that is. Hitmen serving a life sentence in Germany. So not only are we sad about his killing, I know his body was finally released to his mother, even though they were trying to say she could not have a public ceremony after his death. I don't know. It's just like, it's really sad. Let's flip this a little bit, Katy, and come back home and talk a little bit about Bring Chicago Home. It's on the ballot, we hope. Tell us
it's on the ballot. It is on the
Okay.
ballot. Yeah.
Fill us in a little bit on this whole deal.
So last Friday, which this show airs will be a week, and actually by the time this show airs, it may be there may be a different story happening, but I doubt it. The legal wheels, the way being what they are, a judge, a Cook County judge, agreed with the real estate organization that brought the suit against the referendum called Bring Chicago Home on a couple bases. Really, it's more on more related to form, not function, not substance. They said that the referendum was poorly written and confounded because it both raises the real estate transfer tax and lowers it in the same referendum. It's a lot of arcane stuff, as ever, when you dig deep into both policy and judicial decisions about policy. But the bigger question and the bigger piece about this is that people have been being told by those same interests that it is a increase in real estate tax. It is not. That's the biggest thing people have to understand, because that sounds alarms for everyone. You yourself are a homeowner. You know that real estate tax is a huge deal to come up with every year. This is not an increase in that. It is a real estate transfer tax, a one-time paid tax that we all pay if we're lucky enough to buy a piece of property, whether it's a condo, a co-op like me, or a house. You pay a transfer tax. And this piece of legislation, this referendum proposes an increase in that transfer tax on pieces of property, whether they're commercial or domestic, I'll call it, over $1 million. And at the same time, it decreases that same transfer tax on transactions less than $1 million. That particular piece seems to be the sticking point on why the judge felt it could get tossed. So the other piece of that is that entire raise of the RETT, real estate transfer tax, is about developing a dedicated fund to address homelessness and affordable housing and the issues surrounding homelessness. Why? Because we've had a growing homeless population in Chicago. Everyone who lives here knows it. Before the 80s, we never saw people camped out on the street or in the parks, almost never. And since the mid 80s on, increasingly, we have a population right now estimated to be over 60,000 homeless people in Chicago. We need to address that, and without going into funds that are meant to do other things for the city. So robbing Peter to pay Paul has not worked, obviously. If we walk to our grocery store, there will be people asking us for money every step of the way on Morse Avenue. This Bring Chicago Home was meant to address the lack of a dedicated fund to address those problems, as well as at the same time put some emphasis and some teeth into and support into developing and supporting affordable housing, which is in fact, been disappearing in Chicago in a scary rate for the last 20 years. What's at risk here is seeing the inequity grow between the very, very wealthy and what they can afford and what they can buy as far as housing goes, and the rest of us. People are voting for it right now. Those of us who have been actively supporting it are continuing to support it. And we've got people going door to door and making phone calls, encouraging folks to continue to vote for it while it makes its way through the courts, which may overturn what was decided last Friday. So that's that.
Katy, you've been really involved with this, as has Network 49 and many others around the city. And I know you're still doing phone banks, and there's some door knocking. Are you still looking for recruits? And
Always.
do you want to share some
Always.
information about how people can become involved?
Yeah, they can go to bringchicagohome.org, which has is connected with Mobilize, which is a way to sign up to do something in your own neighborhood. In our neighborhood, like you said, the Network 49 and the 49th Ward Dems have been running both canvases and phone banks for about 6 or 8 weeks at this point. Really tremendous volunteers. We could use more in the final 3 weeks of this campaign, particularly because of the confusion about the court case, and to let people know they should continue to vote what they want, because whether or not those votes get publicized at the end of the day, we will see that a huge percentage of the city wants to support this, as that's what our phoning and door knocking tell us.
Well, you were in on a phone call with activists who are involved in this. Is there anything from that you would like to share when the word came down from the judge's decision?
What was said by our legal team was, hold fast, continue to do what you've been doing until we see what the appeal results in. Some good advice in terms of let's not trash the judicial member who made the decision, even though she did an unusual thing of not explaining her decision. She handed it out and then left the courtroom. I'm not sure if that's what he's afraid of, or if she was afraid of, kickback, because there are an awful lot of people who are working really hard for this. What I should say is, this is something that came from the Coalition for Chicago the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, that has been dealing on the front lines of this problem for decades. It is not Brandon Johnson's piece of legislation. It is a coalition of folks who have been on the front lines dealing with homelessness and looking at other cities as to how they are addressing it. This same type of legislation dealing with the real estate transfer tax has passed and is in operation in cities like San Francisco, LA, New York. And, in LA in particular, I read they had to tweak it after they passed it, but it's in operation. So it's not that radical. It's something that's needed. And people should not believe a small handful of business owners who would rather pay large legal fees than address and solve a real problem.
Well, I think it's been great to work. I know that the organization we're both part of, Network 49, has been involved, and you are involved. And there are, I found online, both Maria Haddon had a lot of comments about the court decision, as did our state rep, Kelly Cassidy. And it's something that seems to be picking up a lot of momentum. People in support of it, organizations coming out for it. And then we get this decision by the judge, unexplained, and we're not sure where it'll go. There's going to be an appeal. I want to thank you for coming on with your clear thinking on a lot of issues, Katy, and sharing a little bit of time with us. It's always an honor to have you back on the show. And I want to just thank you publicly and say to everyone else, stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, or however you're watching the show or listening to the show. And we're taking a musical break, and then we will be back with our next guest, who is Mariyana Spyropoulos. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of March 2nd in the year 2024. I'm still your host, Michael James, and it's an honor to bring on someone who we had on the show a number of years ago when we were doing it live down there at the WLUW studios, the one and only Mariyana Spyropoulos.
Right.
The word says Spyropoulos. Is that right?
Spyropoulos rhymes with metropolis.
I like that. That's good. When we had you on the show years ago, you were running for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Chicago, and I'm going to ask you what attracted you first to that position, and why do you want to switch to another position, and that would be the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County.
Well, thank you, Mike, for having me on the show. It's an honor to be back. I'm sorry that we're not in person, but hopefully, one day soon we'll make that happen.
Well, at the inauguration, probably.
Okay, it's a deal. So I originally ran for the Water Reclamation District because, that agency, let's go back to 2010 when I was first elected, reelected in 2016, and then reelected most recently in 2022. The agency is a lot different today than it was back then. And I saw it as an agency that could have real impact with regards to climate change, with regards to government and how it was run. And I'm happy to say that I have brought some, I believe, meaningful change to that agency. So since I've been elected, we have embraced green infrastructure. And I know that for most people, that is an everyday phrase, but take yourself back to 2010 and how agencies like MWRD were operating. Green infrastructure was not part of their approach. They relied solely on the deep tunnel as a way to manage stormwater. Now we have a program where we work with municipalities, and green infrastructure is a key part of that. So I'm happy to say that I'm one of the people that champion that. Number two, with regards to a government agency and good government, we were not broadcasting our meetings. Now you can watch us live on our website. And I was the one that advocated for that. Number two, I introduced the policy for an independent inspector general for an agency that was, 130 plus years old. There was a little bit of pushback, but I introduced it in April of 2017, and we got it passed in 2019. So I'm happy to say that, we have brought this agency that's done a lot of good work into the 21st century, but there's still, some things that, we need to do. Now, during this whole time, I've been an attorney. People don't know that part of me. I've been an attorney for over 25 years. I went to John Marshall Law School, which is now UIC Law, and I got my MBA from Loyola. And I started my legal career as an assistant state's attorney, working in child support, in juvenile, night narcotics, criminal appeals. I then opened my own law practice and did contract work, business transactions, et cetera. And so, that's how I started my career. And then I ran for the Water Reclamation District. And I've been able to use that, my legal background in some of the decisions that I've made at the Water Reclamation District. But I'm bringing my knowledge of government, which with the Water Reclamation District, a countywide agency with $1 billion budget, where I served as president for 2 terms and chairman of finance, where we have a balanced budget, and my legal career navigating the courtroom to run for clerk of the circuit court. It's sort of a unique experience where I can bring those 2 backgrounds together to bring change to this office, which I think badly needs it.
Well, you won't be the only person we know and like who was on the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Also, Josina Morita, she was a member of that, and now is on the Cook County Board of Commissioners, I believe. And what will happen?
Deborah Shore, too.
Deborah, yeah, I saw her with Biden on the news somewhere recently, something going on. Oh, in Palestine, Ohio.
Yes.
She was there. Yeah. All of you have been guests on the show. So what happens to your position at the MWRD if you are elected to the Clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County position?
So this is a frequently asked question on the campaign trail. So basically what happens is the governor will be able to appoint somebody to fill the vacancy until the next election. So although I just got elected in 22 for a 6-year term, the governor will appoint someone until the next election in 26. So then that person would have to run for a complete term.
Any insight into who might try to run for that position, or is that a secret we'll talk about later?
I don't know. I mean, people are saying, that the individuals want to, would like to be appointed, but they'll have to talk to the governor about that. And I'm not aware of any secrets regarding filling the spot.
Well, let's switch to the office you're after, this Clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County. Tell me and our listeners and viewers what that position is all about. What do you do? What will you do if you have in that position? Or first of all, what is the office itself? And then we'll get to what you would do that may be different from the current holder.
Okay, it's a great question. And many people are unaware of what the office does because it's more of an administrative support position. But it can potentially have a huge impact on people. And there are a lot of examples of that I can mention today. The clerk of the circuit court is the record keeper for the court system. So there are when you go into a courtroom, you've got your judge, you've got your attorneys, but you also have a clerk that provides the administrative support of entering the order, entering the next court date. And when you file a lawsuit or are responding to a lawsuit, you'll have a court date. And that documentation that you're filing will then be assigned to a judge. So you have to make sure that documentation is in the right courtroom on the right day at the right time. Now, keep in mind that we have one of the largest court systems in the United States. Los Angeles is larger, but it's a diversified system. Here in Cook County, we have a unified system. So we have a lot of cases that have to be managed, and a lot of courthouses. We've got Markham, Bridgeview, Maywood, Daly Center, Skokie, Rolling Meadows, and a lot of branch courts. So there are a lot of individuals that work for the clerk's office, about 1,400 employees with a $130 million budget. Your and my tax dollars are being used to make this office work or not work, as the case may be currently. And so, it has to run like a well-oiled machine in terms of the people, in terms of the processes, in terms of the paperwork, and I would argue the technology. But that's one of the platforms that I'm running on to make the technology work.
This office way back, it was under the direction of Dorothy Brown. There was a lot of kind of negative things that happened, no consequences. She left the position. Iris Martinez is there now. You've been endorsed by the Democratic Party, who we tend to root for sometimes, but not always. And I'm just
hopefully in this case you do.
It's getting better. It's very different. We maybe can address that a little bit later, but your criticism of the current office holder and what you would do differently.
Well, how much time do we have?
We got another 15 minutes, I think.
Okay. Well, I think that there's a lot that needs to be addressed regarding this office. But there are some incidences that are supported by news outlets, and I'd like to bring those up so that if your listeners or viewers would like to do more research, dig a little deeper on these stories, I think that's important. So WBEZ did a story in May of 23 where if you go through the restorative justice program and you have a low-level felony, and you satisfy the requirements of that program, the felonies should be removed from your record and you have a clean record.
Right.
And that was not happening. So the public defender, who was representing many of those people, noticed this because their clients were, had lost their jobs because the employers found out there was a felony on the record, pointed it out to the clerk's office. The clerk pointed the finger to the chief judge and said, that's not our responsibility. It's the chief judge's responsibility. And that's not true. It's the clerk's job to do that. So there's a couple of problems in this scenario. Number one, taking responsibility for what you're supposed to be doing. But number two, the issue didn't just happen to one or two individuals. It was many individuals who were impacted by this. So I would argue when you're running for a leadership position, it involves addressing problems. Problems will arise, and the way you approach it is indicative of how you're going to, approach the policy in this office. And that's to sit down with the stakeholders, come up with solutions, and fix those problems. A second scenario that came out more recently was an individual had been wrongly convicted. And when more evidence came out, he was released. And he was able to obtain a certificate of innocence from the Supreme Court. He moved to another state to start a new life, but was unable to get a job because, again, a felony was on his record. The reporter for the story, this is a CBS story, raised the issue with the clerk's office and said, what's going on? And basically all they did was resend the certificate of innocence. And the reporter said, this doesn't really help us solve the problem. I would appoint, again, to sit down and solve this problem. It's being presented to you, and try to help this individual out with this problem. He paid a dear price with many years of his life in jail. He was wrongfully convicted. And, this sort of goes to the clerk's approach of not taking responsibility, not really, trying to do a professional job. And most recently, a couple of days ago, a story that had been covered by several news outlets regarding the identity of juvenile individuals that were part of cases. So the office was attempting to put criminal cases online. So if I were going to do that, I would want to run it by my entire legal department and say, okay, our tech division to make sure, do we have security in place for this information? Is this legal? We're not violating any statutes. Well, what the current clerk did was put these criminal cases online and expose the identities of 5,000 juveniles whose identity should be protected. So it's against the law to do this. And it's irresponsible, to put it lightly. And, you're really putting these people's lives at risk in many ways by exposing those identities. So it's a lot of mismanagement that's going on. And, there's process, there's how you're handling people. For example, the union that represents 3/4 of the employees in this office, 1,400 employees, they're endorsing me because they don't have any confidence in the management of the current office. The teams, like I said, Teamsters 700 has said there's been bullying, there's been nepotism, there's an unprofessional atmosphere going on. A lot of friends and family have been hired in that office. Resumes have been altered in order to provide the friends and family these jobs. And it really goes to setting an atmosphere of where people do just not feel comfortable doing their jobs and they want change.
Mariyana, let me ask you, is the current holder of that office, was she endorsed by the Democratic Party when she first ran?
No.
No. Okay, just wanted to check that out. You talk a lot about ethics, and you also talk about Inspector General for the county. I'm not sure what that's, talk about all that. What's that about?
Sure. So I think it's important to have a independent Inspector General in this office. The current office holder will talk about that she has an Inspector General, but I would argue that it's not, that this person is not independent because they report to her. So that doesn't create an atmosphere where employees feel comfortable reporting and saying things that they observe or they see. you have to create an environment where people feel safe in that space to be able to report things. Also, the current office is not subject to FOIA. And so, trying to get
Tell people what FOIA is.
Freedom of Information Act, where you should be able to request, information regarding a government agency, and they can provide documentation. This current office is saying that because there is some stricter rules regarding, the court system, that they're basically hiding behind that and not providing information. I want to, once I get into that office, work for more transparency. So that people can get the information regarding our budget, our resources, where we're putting people, how many cases we have. Obviously, we would not expose any kind of sensitive information in cases. That would be something that we would provide strict security on. But with regards to the functioning of the office, I don't see any harm in trying to work for greater transparency regarding that as well. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so there is an inspector general. I don't know how do we get the inspector general? Elected, appointed for the county, and that's different than the inspector general for Chicago.
So at the Water Reclamation District, when I introduced the policy for the inspector general, basically we signed an intergovernmental agreement with the county. So Water Reclamation District is a separate government agency, and we signed an IGA with the county, and they provide our inspector general for Water Reclamation District, so that people can go outside of the agency and call a hotline or fill out forms and say, these are things that we find that we would like further investigation of. So for the clerk's office, we could look into something similar to that. But providing that independence is something that I definitely want to work on, to make sure that individuals not only feel free, but you're also creating an environment where everything sort of works under the values of, we want transparency, we want ethics, and have the employees understand that this is important under the new administration.
Mariyana Spyropoulos, let me shift a little bit here now. I want to, you're kind of part of a group of women, a women's insurgency, a change in the way the governments are run. We have I think it was Minneapolis, all of the city council is all women now. And here in Chicago, we have, people like Maria Haddon, the 49th Ward. We have Robin Gable, who's really risen to a position of influence in the legislature. We have our one and only Jan Schakowsky, Kelly Cassidy, Josina Morita. Talk a little bit about women in politics and the kind of the phenomena or the thrust, the direction, the tide here in Chicago.
Well, it's about time, right?
I'd say so. I had a lot I have a lot of old aunts and grandmas. The men weren't around in my family as much. They were to a time, but they died a lot younger. And I'm really grateful for the strong women and wonderful people I've had in my life. So share your view on all that.
Yeah, I'm very excited by all of these very strong and capable women who are in leadership and serving their communities. Certainly, Josina and Jan Schakowsky and Maria Haddon are all supporting my campaign. I support their efforts in terms of service to their community, because that's what they're about. You can certainly see on social media, if you follow any of them, how they are always present in the community. I think that's important to have your boots on the ground and have that connection with people so that you can hear what's going on. And Jan, she's a congresswoman in Washington, but she's always out in the community. I just saw her yesterday in Evanston. The Evanston Democratic Party had their candidate forum, and she was there, providing leadership And, Josina, I did serve with Josina at the Water Reclamation District. So I did see her commitment to service there. And she, when she switched over to being a commissioner at Cook County, she hit the ground running and is doing an amazing job as well. So we have worked together on several projects that she's doing in her community.
You are endorsed by the Democratic Party here in Chicago. And, at one time I was the president of the 49th Ward Democrats, but I come out of the left. I'm a progressive guy still on most issues. And what's your take? And how much can you talk about your take on the Democratic Party these days? Because it's not like the old machine, but it's not always good. So as a member of the Democratic Party, someone who's endorsed by the Democratic Party for this position, your thoughts on the Democratic Party?
So, I mean, like any other organization, everyone's not going to always agree on everything. But I think since I have been running for office, which has been, 13 plus years, I think that the party has moved into a more progressive place. Certainly, like you mentioned, there are more women, and there are, diversity is very important. Having different members of different communities be represented in the party leadership, as well as trying to support candidates that are in different diverse communities as well is important. So I'm happy to be part of that. When you're running for office, especially a countywide office, you want more support than less support. So having the party's support is key to that. You also you get support in terms of getting petitions signed. We submitted 27,000 signatures out there, so that's very helpful. You also the party does mailers out to Democratic voters. So having that can be a little cost prohibitive to people to get your name in front of Democratic voters in that particular way. So that's a big support as well. So I think Toni Preckwinkle is doing a good job. She's the chairperson of the party, and I applaud her efforts for trying to bring that diversity component into the party.
Well, it's really good talking to you. I'm going to ask you one more question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your plans for the future. I mean, if you win this position, are you going to run for mayor someday? What do you got in back? What are you thinking about? And where do you?
Thanks, Mike. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents came over to start look for opportunity because they didn't have that opportunity in Greece. So, it's a story like so many other immigrants. Working hard. My dad started a small business. I worked in that small business in various capacities. And so I saw how they sacrificed so much throughout the decades, and working hard and sacrifice is sort of the things that I've brought with me to what I do. My parents also stressed education, which is why I went to law school, and also giving back. And I think running for office and trying to make government work, which government is about service. Providing service to people, helping people. That's how I see it. And that's what I envision my plan is for what I've done at Water Rec, but what I want to bring to the clerk's office as well. I want to make this office work in terms of bringing it to communities. We can work with pro bono legal clinics to make sure that the court system is more accessible to people who may not be able to run down to a courthouse and need a little bit of help navigating what can be a very intimidating process for a lot of people.
Mariyana Spyropoulos, it rhymes with metropolis. For the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County, we wish you well, and we want to thank you for coming on live from the Heartland.
Thanks, Mike. My website is citizensformariyana.com. If anybody would like to get a lawn sign or want to do phone banking with us, we're on all social media platforms as well. I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for this opportunity.
We'll be seeing you again. Everybody,
don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote. You can vote now. And it's March 19th is the actual last day you can vote. Everybody vote. There's a lot of things, particularly bring Chicago home, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we're going to close out the show. And I want to thank the people who helped make the show possible. One of them was a guest today, Katy Hogan, as well as our other guest, Mariyana Spyropoulos. I want to get it. And
You got it.
I want to thank Tom Clark. I want to thank Hal James, our engineer. We're going to be back next week. We've got a number of guests coming up, not necessarily in this order, but we have the lawyer Alan Mills talking about Illinois prisons, our pal Tom Clark, Peter Kuttner's coming on to talk about the Workers' Rights Film Festival. Steve Hashimoto will be coming on to talk about music in the city. And I think that's enough. I just want to say, keep doing good in the world. The world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that Mariyana, Katy Hogan, et cetera do. All power to the people. Over and out. We want to thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show. New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Episodes air each following Thursday on CAN TV, 9 p.m. in Sweet Home Chicago on Channel 21 or streaming everywhere else at cantv.org. Audio episodes go live on WLUW each Saturday, 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM or streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org. They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limb. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing